And we are going live. Hello and welcome to Grace of Westminster Friday live stream. It's just me today with Tilly and her butt. So Becky is away, and we're gonna talk today about film scanning. So we have Sam behind the comments. So he's our comments DJ. So if you have any questions on film scanning or anything to do with DSLR scanning, etc., do let me know. I'm not sure how is the sound, by the way. So just want to make sure that I sound all right. I'm a one-man band, so I'm not sure if I set up everything correctly, but hopefully everything is fine. Obviously, windy nowadays, isn't it? So doing it from home, the trains to London are actually cancelled. And well, hopefully where you are, it's nice and still, not too windy. But in England, please guys stay safe, and hopefully it's going to go away soon. I have a public service announcement with regards to current deliveries. If you place an order with Grace of Westminster yesterday, it might have been delayed, so do give us a call or check if you got a tracking number, check with your courier who is delivering your goods. So hopefully they will deliver today, but if not, it may delay for a couple of days. We are still expecting collections today, so if you ordered anything today, hopefully it will be collected, but again, it may be delayed for a couple of days, so do, if there is anything, do give us a call or do check your tracking number. Coffee Fund is open. If you want to send me some coffee, so I've got one here, or maybe a whiskey, or maybe a nice mild wine, because it's cold out here. You can do that via YouTube, via PayPal, etc. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And if you like the stream, do like and subscribe. We hit 11,900 subscribers so far. So let's push to 12K. Hopefully that's going to be soon. And the last but not least, I want to thank Steve Taylor as well, who we had a good discussion on film scanning over emails. So let's have a look at the comments before we start, and hopefully more people will join us today. So how many people we have now? 89. That's not bad. So who do we have in the chat? So we've got David Liu. Hello, David. Hey, Randall. Roy as well. Nice. Bob. Fantastic. Okay. Yeah, a lot of people didn't go to work today, just staying at home in England. What's the name of that thing? It's Storm Eunice. They give them nice names, don't they? Okay, well, hi everyone. I would like to photograph snow. Okay. What macro lens is good for film? Okay, we're going to discuss that a bit later. And there's a good recommendation of 60 micro, so that's really good. Hello from Connecticut. Perfect. All right, well, thank you, Adrian. Appreciate. So the coffee fund is keep rolling. I'm going to have a nice sip and we're going to get started. So, as you may know, for the love of beanies, we all shot film back in the day. Some of us are still doing it today. So you may have some negatives either from your old family negatives or back from 80s, 90s. But also if you're shooting again, you may find yourself in a position where you're trying to find what is the best way to digitize your negatives. So what we're going to do today, we're not going to do the actual scanning or something like this, because that's normally takes ages, but I'm going to cover all the aspects and what options you have. Let's start with the Nikon one. So the Nikon option is actually, you can buy ES1 and ES2. Those are scanning adapters that you can attach to a macro lens. So they're normally designed for your 60mm macro, but you can also use 55mm macro lens as well. So that's a manual focus one. You can also use 40DX macro lens. And if you've got the latest Z50 lens, that's also compatible. So the problem with this setup, the main thing really is designed primarily for 35mm format. So you got any medium format, then you can't really do anything with it. You can potentially shoot digitize smaller formats, but that will again require a bit of modification. So you may need to cut out some sort of mask to do that. And generally with this type of setup, you may need an even light source. So if you don't have a light source or something like LED lamp, which you can do, which you can use, so something like this, you can also point it out of the window and hopefully, you know, you're going to get fairly good light. So Nikon released the version 2 of ES2 adapter, which is £100 more. So if ES1 is £79 and ES2 is £169, that comes also with a kind of slide attachments and 6 basically film strip attachment as well. So pretty good, pretty interesting. What I would suggest you is generally, if you don't really want to scan more than, let's say, 35mm format and want to keep it simple, then this is the way to go. All you need is a camera, a macro lens, an attachment, and a source of light. Now, the problem with that setup is generally, let's say if you don't have a macro lens, then it's highly unlikely that you will be able to shoot. Even if you have 105, you can modify it with additional basically extension rings or any spacers that you can add. So you can do that, and generally the main issue what you'll have as a part of obviously scanning larger negatives is the flatness of the negative and the dust. So the main problem with all the scanning is the flatness of the negatives itself. So if you got some negatives like this, so let me see if I can switch to a different camera here. So let's see, here we go. So if you got something like this, so the main problem is keeping that negative flat, especially if you've got some old negatives, they highly likely curled up. I know that some people actually stock all their rolls literally inside the canisters, film canisters, so they were just rolled up, and once you take them out, it's very difficult to actually make them flat. All right, so this is an option one. So the option two, you can buy a flatbed scanner, and flatbed scanners can be very inexpensive. You get one of those Epson scanners, so you got V600 model, which starts at about £289, and it basically comes with pretty much all holders that you will need. So 35mm, basically medium format, and also 5x4 format. So that's pretty good. So let's see. I was told to remove the photo. Didn't I remove the photo? Here we go. Oh, here I am. All right. You see, I'm trying to set up a 2-camera setup, and it may not work really well. So I just need to make sure that I'm DJing here behind the keyboard, and make sure that I do all the transitions. So what I was saying is, yeah, if you got old negatives, they may be not flat as you expect them to be, and yeah, the main problem with those things is just keeping them flat. Okay, so flatbed scanners, they can scan all the documents you want, as well as transparencies. If you look at the Epson lineup, you've got V600, V800, and V850. So generally, you may want to go for the top offerings, so something like V800 or V850, because the scanning quality is much, much better. So if you haven't seen those, let me just show them to you. So they look pretty much like that. And then you also will have different scanners holders. So obviously the benefit of this type of setup is you pretty much can scan anything. You can, for something like V800, you can also get 8x10 holder, so you can even go very large format if you ever need to. So those are good options. The problem with that the actually quality of the scans themselves is not very good, because especially for smaller formats like 35mm and 110 formats, the reason for that is just the resolution is not very good. So they're not specifically designed for this type of work. This is genuinely a bonus, but of course it's something that you can start with again. Something like AS1, AS2, it will get you going. I know there's a lot of people shooting with those as well, but as I say, the image quality may not be as good. One of the problems with this type of scanners as well, especially if you go for the earlier models like V700, which is a previous generation of V800 scanner. The problem with this setup is that the spacers that come with them, they generally, there's no focus on the scanner themselves, so you can't really just focus on. So if the negative is not sharp, you can't really do anything. And you can buy some third-party holders, and they will allow for height adjustments. If you go with the latest scanners, so they generally have some adjustments of the height of the holders, therefore you can get things right. But again, sometimes you can get it right, you get this row of negatives sharp, you go to the next set, let's say, then you may have a problem again and you may need to readjust. So it's a little bit finicky, not ideal, but it's definitely an option. So let's see what we have here. So we've got AS2 with ZMC105. So I'm in communication with Steve Taylor, who bought 105 Z Micro, and he told me that as soon as it arrives, he will test the setup. So technically, it shouldn't be supported, but at the same time, it's got one-to-one reproduction, so I think it actually should work. The F-mount 105 is no one-to-one reproduction, so that's where the problem is. So I think that actually 105Z should work with this setup. It's just we haven't seen 105 in basically in the flash yet. So I think technically it should work, but we should get the confirmation hopefully rather sooner than later. So yeah, Roy says scanners are pretty low res. That's exactly my point, especially if you're shooting something like 35 film primarily. It's not very good. Let's say that. It's useful if you were doing, let's say, Facebook type, social media, Instagram, that's generally fine. But at the same time, I would say if you just bought them online and you don't print them, then just get your film scanned at the same time as being developed. So you can get those things scanned for additional like £3-4. And yeah, you either get it via online, via something like WeTransfer, or they normally attach it to a CD. So yeah, Mark Thompson says, now I've been happy with my Epson V750 for 35mm. Exactly. So Plastek is far better option. So looking at things like Plastek and other scanners, they generally, what we would call them, a dedicated film scanner. So they effectively design to do one thing, is scan transparencies. And generally, we would have 35mm scanners and smaller negative scanners. So generally, you get 35, so it means you can scan things smaller via additional adapters. And then you also got dedicated film scanners can also scan 120 film, so very medium format, as we call it. So anything, let's say, up to 6x13 panoramic medium format. And also some scanners like Imacon can potentially scan 5x4. As well. So there's certain holders you can get for those. So let me show you a couple of options that are available in that space. So we're just gonna switch to the images here. So have a look. Okay, so Nikon had a good lineup of scanners which they discontinued a bit about 5 to 7 years ago, and unfortunately they no longer support them. So those scanners were fairly priced back in the day, so you could get Coolscan V5, which was entry level for about £500. Then Coolscan 5000 was about £1,200, and the main difference was that Coolscan 5000 was a bit faster. So the scanning times were a bit faster, but also you can get additional attachments like a whole roll, like 36mm frame scanner. So the negatives will go in one way and will come out in another way. And then on the medium format side of things, we have Coolscan 9000, which can scan the medium format. And medium formats, basically anything they do a roll, I think it scans up to about 6x13, which would be panoramic medium format, and obviously anything smaller than that. So I've got one here actually. So here it is. It's a big heavy thing about, I think it's something about 10 plus kilograms. So those are like gold dust nowadays. They used to be about £2,500. They are going secondhand for about the same money right now. So if you look on places like eBay, then yes, those are available, but unfortunately just very, very expensive. And that's the main problem with dedicated film scanners. If you want to buy a dedicated film scanner for medium format, be prepared to spend a lot of money. There are options available from Plastek. I believe that one goes for about 1,500. The jury on that is a bit split. From all the reviews that I've seen, they're kind of mixed. So not 100%. And I know that you have Brown Reflector, which basically makes literally the same rebranded scanners. And then another brand which is called Pacific something. Let me just quickly get that. And then, yeah, you've got something like Prime Films XA, which is Pacific Image Electronics. They all make literally the same 120 scanner. Surprisingly, it's, as I say, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So do check if you're ordering those. Normally good reviews are available on a place like B&H, where users just leave their own comments on their experience as well. If you're looking at the cheap 35mm scanner right now, then Plastek is a really good option. So my colleague Sam, who is on DJing on the comments today, so he has Plastek scanner and he likes it very much. I think the main problem for him was that each frame you scan, you basically have to do one scan, then move the holder to another frame and then do scan again. So there's no batch scanning option. So if you're into batch scanning option, there's a manufacturer called Reflector and Pacific Rim, which is Pacific Rim. That's a nice name of the movie. Pacific Image Electronics. They do literally the same scanner for European market and for American market. So in US they call it Pacific Image Electronics, and in EU they call them either Brown or reflectors. They give you an option of actually do a batch scanning. So you can literally, if you got a 36 frame strip, you can just put it on one end, and then let me just see if I can zoom in a little bit more on this. So yeah, so you can just put film on one end, it's going to come out on another end, and it can do it basically automatically. That thing you can get, the cheapest one is about £500-600, and then if you want a slightly higher, you got a slightly higher resolution, so it technically goes to 10,000 DPI. Now we're going to talk about DPI a little bit later, but effectively you got nominal resolution, which they all claim to be something like 10,000 DPI, and there's effective resolution, which means the highest resolution where you can actually resolve the negative. And whatever you add after that, basically not going to add any details, it just will load your file. So technically this kind of goes to 5,000 DPI effective resolution, which is really good. It would be equivalent something about maybe 30-36 megapixels. Cool scans are going to 4,000 DPIs, and those are roughly about 24 megapixels. For 35mm format. So as a cheapest option, something like this, it's fairly reasonable. It comes with a basic Silverfast software, which we're going to cover later on. But if you're just scanning 35mm, this is a good option. If you are scanning 120 and larger, unfortunately, yeah, you literally have either Coolscan 9000 or Imacon, which start at basically 5,000 plus. And then, yeah, you've got well, obviously we're not going to talk drum scanners, but yeah, you can scan with your flatbed scanners. It's just the image quality is not going to be very good. Okay, let's see what we have in here. So, never been happy with my Epson. Yes, we've done that. Oh, thank you, Randall. Appreciate it. Just in case, if I forget to mention anyone, I'm really sorry. So, it's my first time after a long while, so I could be a little bit stressed, but hopefully we'll get through that. So let's see. Nikon copy stand Mark II, but any stand most likely will do the same. Yes, so we're going to get to DSLR scanning in a minute, and we're going to cover different options there. In my opinion, currently, dedicated film scanner is the best option, but it could be the most expensive, especially if you're shooting at 120. And the reason for that being is just the scans quality is fantastic, and you basically set them up once and they work. You don't need to fiddle with anything else. The problem with this type of things is they are very slow for scans, especially if you want to get good quality, because you may want to add multi-exposure, you want to get a couple of passes per negative. So that could get very slow. So if you need to scan your 36 frames of film, it could take off, well, you can get about 5 minutes on Coolscan 9000 per frame. So if you multiply it by 36, so you're looking at a couple of hours. The good thing is that the dust that can be on your negatives, and dust is the problem with scanning negatives, can be cured, especially for color, not so much for black and white. But if you do have a lot of color negatives, there's an IC technology which is built into the scanners themselves, as well as software. So that is curable. Obviously, yeah, not so much for black and white. I've seen some plugins that do look into black and white cleaning, but it's done in the post-production effectively. So it's not done while you're scanning it. So, and obviously the main problem is that most of the scanners that basically that were available at the time from Nikon, from Konica Minolta, they've been discontinued. Even if you're looking at commercial scanners, like you've got Fuji scanners, so you've got Noritsu and you've got Frontier scanner, which normally labs, developed labs are using. They are no longer available brand new. So a lot of people starting labs nowadays as a small business due to the film revival, they have to source them secondhand. What's the problem with that? Well, basically, if they fail, while they can be serviced to a degree, some things are no longer replaceable. So general CLA, so basically relubrication, clean of the mirror, those are still possible. On Imacons, you can still replace the light bulbs, etc., etc. But at the same time, if something fails, like sensor or something like this, that's pretty much the scan is gone. And spending something like $2.5 grand for 35mm scanner is a huge risk. But at the same time, people buying expensive electronics cameras like my Mia 7, which cost for £2,000, and obviously if they fail, they're non-fixable. People buying those expensive point and shoots, and if they fail, they're pretty much replaceable. But overall, if you think about it, it's a bit of a risk, so you need to prepare yourself on that. And another problem that we have with it is adapting them to the current current computer. So let's say Coolscan 9000 comes with FireWire port, which is no longer available either in Apple or even PC. So you can't get those on PC on the laptops. You need to get a PCIe card that supports FireWire. And actually, if you would buy this kind of brand new, it would come with that card. Now, some people don't have a dedicated computer station, so they use laptops, so that's pretty much impossible. So I use my Coolscan 9000 on MacBook from 2018, I believe, and I had to buy 2 attachments in order to use it. So basically, we got a FireWire cable here. So let's see, got FireWire cable here. So then I had to get, I had to get a FireWire to Thunderbolt, and then after that, I have a Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3. So after that, my MacBook recognizes it. So it's not straightforward. It's not straightforward, so it may not work. And obviously, the Nikon software may no longer work as well. So that's the thing. I mean, I know that some people can still modify the drivers, and they can still use Nikon Scan. I think it's version 4.3 was the last one. They can still use it on Windows 10 and I believe Windows 11 now. But the problem with that is, it requires a little bit of fine tuning. It's like, it's like a lot of people when still using Capture X2, which been discontinued 7 years ago, and they modify, let's say, D850 file and make the software think that's a D800 file, and because by a sensor generally, the software can decode the files. So it is not straightforward, but it is usable if you need to. So that's that. And now we're going to go to DSLR scanning. So I've got the rig here. So let's see if you can do transition. So you've got basically a copy stand, or you can use a tripod. You can use an enlarger and take the enlarger head off. So a lot of people, who used to print themselves and had their own darkroom, they would still have this left. You can buy those, but they're quite expensive. I think this is the Kaiser version. I bought it second hand, and I paid about £150. They are brand new, I think, for about 400 plus. So I don't think you need something like this, but generally the sturdier setup you get, the less shake you'll have. So that's the idea behind it. But yeah, if you got an old enlarger, just remove the printing head, and it should generally have an attachment for the camera there. You can obviously, put your camera on the tripod facing down. It's not as easy to do, but generally it is possible. So what you need for this setup is basically you got a copy stand, you got a camera, you got your source of light. So in my case, it would be one of those LED lights. The idea is if you buy any LED lights, you want to get them reasonably high quality. So CRI 95, 97, something like this, but they can become expensive. But this light is pretty good. I think it's, which one is that? That's a Ralena light that's available for about £35. And what I did, because it's not really stable at the back, so when I would put it on the table, it's actually not straight. You can, if you got a 3D printer, or you can also order those, there are certain things available where you can do a print out a certain supports, and that would convert it to a proper scanning rig. So if you got a 3D printer, it's basically going to cost you something like £2-3 to print. You can also commission someone to print those things for you. Again, it's not very expensive. You probably won't pay more than £10. But the idea is it's not just keeps the light stable on the table, it also blocks off additional light coming from it, because what you don't want to have is whatever holder you have, you want to make sure that your holder covers the surface like that, so there's no light spill happening. So you also, what you want to do is you want to really use a small dark room if possible. So you don't need to have a pitch black room, but if you just will get, cover the windows with curtains, that should generally just makes it nice and dark, because reflections coming from your negatives could be quite costly. And what happens is, so when you put the slide behind the negative, and you got some sort of negative holder, what it does effectively, it shines light through that. So let's see if I can get it a little bit closer. And here you have it. So light go through that, and that's whole setup goes into the camera basically. So let's just zoom out that. So you put your negative like this, you got a little puffer, you blow the dust off that, and then all you have to do is basically set your camera the way you want it. So generally you would want to use live view, or you want to use something like, you want to shoot tethered so you can have a live view preview, etc., etc. And what you do is you want to zoom in, you want to manual focus your lens, and you want to make sure it's nice and sharp. And once this set up, generally you can basically take one shot, move on to the next one, take one shot, you move on to the next one, etc., etc. So in terms of this, of course, macro lens is highly recommended, because without macro lenses, you may want to use step-up rings. So extension tubes, pardon me. So extension tubes are good, but the problem is if you use something like a wide angle lens, you might get a bit of barrel distortion, and that will show on the negative overall. So macro lens is highly recommended. So obviously you may have already a camera, you may already have a manual focus lens, so that's hopefully good. Oh, are we online? Hello? Can you hear me? I'm not 100% sure. Is the... Hello? Guys, can you hear me? Hello? Hello? All right, we're live. Good, good. Okay, so let's see. So I'm talking about the DSLR scanning. So hopefully you didn't miss that. Hopefully I wasn't out for about 40 minutes at least, so hopefully it was just 5 seconds or so. Okay, let's see. Do you have any questions so far? Because what we want to do is we want to cover those questions. I don't want to cover everything in 5 minutes and then we're going to miss everything. But Paul was asking, how did I get my Coolscan 9000? Well, I had 2 coming through. So I had to get one off eBay, and I had to get one who actually sold it to Grace Westminster. So so I had 2 in the past, and I also had a Coolscan 5000 as well. So at the moment I have one Coolscan 9000 that does pretty much everything. But as I say, I also when I didn't shoot medium format, I also had this 35mm scanner as well, which is pretty good. So it's as I say, this, I think, imported from B&H is about £500. The same scanner in the UK is called Reflector 10T, I believe, and that will cost you £800 for literally the same scanner. So it makes sense to actually get imported from something like B&H and pay the duties. So the good thing about places like B&H, I'm not sure if Adorama does this, but they generally, you can prepay your duties before you get things sent out. So in terms of this, you know exactly what you pay. You don't need to pay anything extra. Okay, let's see. Remind me for movie stars born. Yes. Hey, thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate it. I need a coffee. Now, Roy says the 850 is great for scanning because it converts negatives in camera. Yes. So ES1, ES2 paired up with the 850 and the macro lens, something like 60mm, allows you to use a menu which is called digital negative digitizer. So effectively, it converts your negative straight and positive in camera. It's only limited to JPEG files, so which is not ideal in my opinion. So, but as a straightforward solution, which doesn't mean you're going to get the best results with it, it's an option. So again, I would recommend it as very entry-level setup. If for something more advanced, I would recommend to either use a scanning ring or get a Coolscan, or any other dedicated film scanner, just because you get much better results. Getting things sharp down to the grain requires more than just a basic setup, I would say. Okay, Michael Appleyard says, for 6x6, I removed the ES2 from the D7200 and use plastic 120 neck holder, which is hard to find, by the way, on the light part. Okay, so on some sort of LED solution. I made a mask from the black cardboard to block out straight light. Simple. So yeah, it is possible. It's fairly straightforward. I would say you can do with what you have already. So you don't really need to worry too much about it. So for example, you don't really need a copy stand for those things. You can use S1, S2 if you already have one. If you need a negative holder, so you got several options, and again, they based basically on different, basically the prices are all over the place. So let's see what we have here. So we got, what I have here is EFH, which is one of the cheapest options. So that is, I think about £90 that thing cost. It comes, well, you can buy, I think it comes with 35mm holder, and you can order obviously all different holders here. So you got, like I've got for myself, just specifically designed for my Mini, so 6x7. I believe he's working now on 5x4 holder, which is a possibility. The way it's designed, very simple. So you got the diffuser panel, which is a kind of plastic, some sort of plastic. Then you've got the holder itself. So I've got actually, there are two layers here. You can have one. Well, the reason why I have two is because I have a 120 holder underneath. So if you just buy 35, it comes with one layer. So, and yeah, all you have to do is just basically put your negatives in there, and you go shot by shot, shot by shot, shot by shot. Fairly straightforward. I did find it that it's not, well, it doesn't keep things perfectly flat. It is usable. It's definitely better because basically this panel on top, it presses on the rims of the negative, so it does keep it flat. The problem is if you over tighten the thing, then you may potentially scratch your negatives. So you can't make it too tight, you can't make it too loose. Because if you make it too loose, the negative will move inside. So it is trying to find the right balance, basically. But it is fairly straightforward. And obviously, the good thing about scanning with your DSLR is effectively you've got your lights, you've got your holder, you've got your lens, and you've got your camera. What does it mean? Instead of having all in one, like a film scanner, you can upgrade your parts one by one. So you want to have higher resolution scans. So let's say you go Z6, upgrade to Z7. You just straight away jump from 24 megapixels to 45 megapixels. Some people using other brands, they can even shoot with a pixel shift and things like this. I personally don't see the benefits of it, using pixel shift for this type of things. Especially, let's say, if you got something like GFX 100S, and then you can, with pixel shift, you get like 400 megapixel file. There's no need for something like that. So it's just, it's too much already. But let's say something like Z7 gives you a really nice 45 megapixel image, which is about something like 8,600 pixels. That's pretty good. So if you're not happy particularly with your lens, maybe you don't have a macro lens, you can upgrade to a macro lens. So you get a bit of vignette in the corners, you can upgrade your lens, etc., etc. So, you don't like your tripod because every time you need to set up, you need to level it, etc., etc., then get a proper copy stand, etc., etc. So you can upgrade your things as you go, as well as the light. You can upgrade it to a higher quality light, which is generally more expensive. So something like, again, Kaiser lights, they're quite expensive. Negative supply charges a fortune for their scanners as well. So just to show you as well different options on the negative holders. So here we go. So we've got this is a essential film holder. So that's what I have. So you've got different options, different holders there. So that setup starts about 17 or 80 pounds, and then by the time you get the holder, you're looking maybe at something like 150 plus. Made in UK, which is very good. So then we have, this is Vario made by Kaiser. So if you look at this little thing at the bottom, so you got copy stand, you got the light, you got the holder for your slides or for your negatives, and then you got camera on top. So that one is a little bit more expensive. I think you're looking at something like 250 pounds. Obviously, just for the holder itself, not the copy stand and the light, etc. And then the most expensive one is negative supply. Obviously, beautifully made out of metal, and it's very tight precision, etc., etc. But that can cost a fortune. I think if you're looking at, let's say, medium format holder and 35mm holder, that could be easily over $1,000, which is, I think, is a little bit too much personally. So I would say, yeah, this is only, let's say, once you're kind of happy with the results you get, and that's your final setup, then you can invest in something like this. So yeah, obviously the other benefits is it's really fast. So You take shot, you move on to the next one. You take shot, you move on to the next one. So 36 frames can be scanned within, let's say, 5 minutes. Or, well, I saw people doing it in 2 minutes, but I'm trying not to be that fast. So, and yeah, you can scan most of the formats. So even 5x4, even something like 8x10. So you will need the largest surface area, LED surface area, the light. But generally, you can do sort of things like this. And obviously, what you may need to do is actually, when you do scans like this, is you basically may want to basically take a shot of a part of the negative, then move, let's say, move the area, take another shot, take another shot, take another shot, take another shot, and then effectively, you'll stitch that image all together. Which means if you shoot in, let's say, 5x4 and you've taken 10 shots of it at 45 megapixels, you're going to have a very huge file. So be ready that obviously that's going to take up a lot of space on your computer. But generally, you can do that. Speaking of resolution, so 24 megapixels on Coolscan 9000 with 4000 dpi. So 5000 dpi gets you about 36 megapixels or so. Now, medium format files are a lot bigger. So I had 100 plus megapixels scanned on 6x7 Mamiya file. So that is really good, obviously focusing down to the grain. So you can get very, very large files, which are easy to print and easy to manipulate as well. In terms of, let's say, so we spoke about Pro, so yeah, we can scan different formats. It can be fairly cheap because you can use the parts you already have. What I don't like about using DSLR scanning, so it can be expensive depending on what you buy, but the good thing, you can start cheap and upgrade later on. Yeah, you can use old and large, etc., etc. So again, the negative holders is the main thing, and keeping negative flat. This is one of the main problems with it. It's I did find that, as I say, with the EFH, it's not ideal. Sometimes it works, but with extra curly negatives, you may find an issue. And if you slightly, let's say, you may have center sharp, and then you're going to have a huge fall over, let's say, in the corners or on the top or the bottom of the negative. And the problem with that, obviously, is, yeah, then you get basically a sharp short in the center, and then you get a huge fall off, later on. Of course, you're going to shoot at something like f8, f11. It still may not be at such high magnifications. The depth of field may be too shallow and not large enough to cover the whole negatives. So that's the main problem I have. I didn't get, let's say, the best result out of it. For me, Scanner was a winner, but I still believe that DSLR scanning is the future. So eventually, we'll get a really good holders. A lot of people recommend an anti-Newton ring glass that you put on top of the negative to keep the negative flat. So that's a good option as well. So you can look into that. So you can set it up, but don't think that you can just buy, let's say, an AFH, get a tripod and get good results. You will get reasonable results, again, for social media, but if you start to, let's say, get into kind of, to the details, you may find that you may need to invest a little bit more into that. And obviously the dust is one of the main problems, so be ready to use one of those all the time. You obviously don't have a built-in dust reduction, so you have to do it yourself. Speaking of other things, if you have some old negatives that may have some stains, maybe they didn't dry properly and you get some sort of water stains on them, there's one thing I can recommend you. There's a thing you can buy on Amazon. It's called Zebra Clean Film Negative Cleaner. So you can wash your negatives with it. Some people use distilled water as well. So that's an option as well. So that is quite good. And for the dust, for us vinyl lovers, you can get those Zero Start Milty thing. And that's, I got it for my vinyls because what it does is, obviously, because of the electromagnetic field that attracts dust to the vinyl. So what you do is you press the thing slowly onto the vinyl, and it basically sends negative charge, positive charge, one of those, and that's basically gets rid of anti-static, and then it's much easier to clean the vinyl from the dust. It works literally the same way for your negatives. So again, you send one charge in there, and then you use your blower to get rid of the rest. So again, 50 quid, not cheap. Obviously, some people don't find it particularly useful. I did buy it for the vinyls first, but I do use it for my negatives as well. And if you've got some negatives as well that may need cutting, so I'm shooting my Mamiya 7, so The Coolscan 9000 doesn't take, it has a holder for medium format, but it's not large enough to fit three 6x7 negatives. So I actually had to, generally when you send your negatives for developing, they send you in strips of 3. So in terms of this, I would have to cut it. And you can do it with scissors, but it's not exactly that straight. So one of those guillotine things where you put your negatives in here, you basically layer it up and you cut it off. So it's nice and straight. So there's little accessories I would recommend. All right, let's see if you have any questions. Wet mount scanning. Okay, you can do it with your Coolscan. You can do it with your Epson scanners. I never went there. It's just too much hassle for me. You can get for Coolscans, you can get special glass holders, which you don't normally get with when you buy something like this. So that would be additional £300-400 back in the day. So generally, what you would have is you would get a holder like this. So which is, again, the main problem is keeping the negative flat. So that may not keep the negative flat. So what you can do is actually get a glass holder. So you can make two glass holders, one that takes strips of medium format film, and obviously you can scan a smaller negative film in there, and one that's basically, it's called rotated negative holder, and this one is basically it's glass, you can only scan one frame at a time, and you got different sets of masks for different formats. So 6x4.5, 6x6, 35mm, etc., etc. But only scans one negative at a time. This is obviously very time consuming, so I would say this type of setup I would recommend only for maybe exhibition type prints, or if it's something that goes into the book, that is very important. So wet mount scanning, it's a lot of hassle. At this point, I think I would just send it off for DrumScan, personally. It's, in terms of how much time it takes and the results, I would say drum scanning probably would be a better option. But again, as I say, we're talking about how to scan your negatives at home and keep it reasonably inexpensive. So in terms of this, yeah, DrumScan would be a good solution, but the cheapest DrumScan I found, I think it was somewhere in Scotland, we're looking at 15 quid per file, and that would be the cheapest. And obviously those guys knowing what they're doing, if you're doing it something in London, you're looking at 20, 25 plus per negative. Again, if you just want to use your images for social media, you can just get your film scanned at the point of developing, basically, so they will do it in-house for you. Third-party kit, Brian said, after the session, please list all the third-party kit. Yes, I kind of wrote a little spreadsheet here, so I'll probably put it in the description under, so you can check it out. So then, obviously, you can Google it up and see what they cost, etc., etc. So yeah, Iron Gun. So yeah, that's a Milty Zero Start, made in UK. Very simple thing. Pretty cool. Again, I'm using it for vinyl as well as negative, so pretty good. Okay, what else do we have here? Let's have a look. My coffee is getting cold. Michael bought a cheap copy stand for £70. Yes, you can buy those. I would recommend, if you go on eBay, you can potentially score a good one, especially if you looking for collection only. If you don't mind to travel, you can pick it up, absolutely. And again, car boot sales, things like this. In some cases, it's actually cheaper just to buy an enlarger, strip the head off, and just use the stand. Let's see what else we have here. I am online, yes. Minolta manual focus scanner, yes, there was one. Minolta scanner is supposed to be really good, but they've been discontinued much earlier even than Nikon scanners, so I haven't had personal experience with those. How much did I pay for Coolscan 9000? I paid £1,000 when I bought it 4 years ago, so you basically can sell it now for profit. But it was the same with my Coolscan 5000 back in the day. I got my Coolscan 5000 about 15 years ago, and I bought a refurbished one from Nikon for about £600. I sold it, stupidly, about 7-8 years ago, and I sold it for about £1,400 on eBay. So don't ask me why people paid for that. But those are like gold dust nowadays. And in terms of this, for 35mm scanners, I would definitely recommend you go third-party route. It's just Otherwise, you will pay premium for the Nikon scanners. Nikon scanners are the best. I mean, obviously, if you're looking at 35mm DK scanners, they're better than reflectors and plastics of the world, but you will pay premium for it. So in terms of this, maybe it's worth, if you're considering shooting medium format, maybe it's worth just considering a scanner that does it all. Or, as a lot of people do, just use one of those scanning rigs. So I kind of went through everything myself. So very recently where I just kind of want to get into that. So I think last scans I did about 5-6 years ago, and then left it as it is. Yeah, as I say, I don't remember when I sold my scanner, etc. And last year we've got into the medium format photography altogether. Hello, Tilly. So do you want to say hi to people? Hello, hello. So Tilly's daycare has been cancelled today, so she didn't see her pals today. So she's staying home with me. So yeah, if you look into those things, they can be expensive, but I think DSLR Ring is a good starting point for people who just want to start reasonably inexpensive. But scanner for me is a solution. So I would say that this is good, but it's a bit finicky every time setting it up. It also takes up a lot of space. Like maybe I got a really big stand though, but the thing takes up a lot of space. You may want to shoot tethered. So you may need to have a Lightroom set up or Capture One. So you shoot straight to the computer. And generally the problem is that while you can have a basic setting like something like f8 and certain exposure that will work for most negatives, you may find, especially with dense negatives or very light negatives, you may find that it's going to be a problem. And then you may just shoot all the 36 frames, and then you start to look through it, and you will find that you may need to reshoot things. So if you start to shoot pretty much one by one and look at the images, make sure they're all nice and sharp, then you're going to spend 5 to 10 minutes per negative. So in this case, I would just load the tray, stick it into the scanner, and it just would do everything for me. So, so I can just leave it, do my stuff, leave it in another room because those things are noisy, and then have a really good result straight after. Okay. Yeah, Paul, 600 for refurbished power. That was long time ago. Yeah, I think the 5000s were available back in the day at that point. And I think, the last one we sold was about 999 brand new, or 1200, something like this. But for some reason, people didn't want to buy them. That's the thing. That was the time where people were getting rid of a lot of their film equipment. Look at how much those things, like you look at the cost of, let's say, Leicas nowadays, like back in the day, you could buy probably Leica M6 for something like £500. You're looking at £2,000 now. My Mia is £2,500. Even you look at Nikon FMs, so you could pick up, let's say, FM2 for about £200. You're probably now looking at something like 500 plus. And the same with scanners. People are just happily to get rid of those things, and it's all seems to be coming back now. So I looked into CoolScan, but there seem to be problems getting software to operate it. Yes, so you can use Nikon Scan software, but it will require a lot of trickery. So this is not the recommendation. What you want to do is you want to look at the two other bits of software. The first one is called ViewScan. Cost, I think, for the film scanning option is about £70. This is pretty much that's what I would recommend, because it says you're paying £70 once. It's there, whatever you're going to use, let's say if you upgrade your scanners, etc., it will work. It will work with your flat bed, etc., etc. So the idea of using this type of software, I shoot raw. So all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the raw data from the scanner. Just the pure data from the scanner. I don't need a tweaking. And then I do my light tweaking and conversion in a post-processing software like Lightroom and with other bits, etc., etc. So for this type of things, it's great for that. The interface is not user-friendly, so you may need to read a bit of articles on scanning, which with everything you generally, if you want to kind of do it properly, you will invest a couple of evenings just learning on those things. But this is pretty much the best software I would recommend. And yeah, it's got built-in dust cleaning as well. So generally, I use medium setting, which does pretty good. I tend to not to use the highest setting just because it gets a little bit soft, but medium setting is pretty good. And then you got Silver Fast. The Silver Fast you can buy, generally you will get Silver Fast if you buy an Epson scan. If you buy one of those plastic scanners, it will come with a basic edition of the Silver Fast software, which is about 49 euros, I believe. Now, it's generally good enough for most things when you want to scan within the Silver Fast, and then you want to convert your image basically do your color grade effectively in the software itself. So that it does work, and they got the profiles for portrait and Fuji, Kodak profiles, etc., etc. It also allows you to fine tune your autofocus, which is a little bit easier to do it on the Silverfast and ViewScan. Both can do that. So you can set your scan effects to manual focus and then adjust the focusing by itself, basically. So, but the problem is, if you want more features, if you want just to get a raw image for conversion, you have to pay a lot more. And they go up to about 400 euros, and actually you can get more expensive than that. What I don't like about Silverfast is when you get this type of software, it's only licensed to a serial number of the scanner. So if I have, in my case, 2 scanners, well, I also have Epson scanner, which kind of I keep for documents, but I need to get additional license for each individual scanner. And let's say if one of those breaks and I get a replacement, so that let's say the same Epson scanner, I would get new model with a different serial number. Again, I would have to pay for additional license, and that's what I don't like about that. So in terms of this, I think ViewScan is priced reasonably good, and generally, for the amount of money you're going to spend on all this, ViewScan is a reasonably inexpensive option. So, but yes, there are some people who swear by Silverfast. I'm not going to say that Silverfast is bad. The images you can get out of it, is great, absolutely. So in terms of this, those 2 bits of software are quite important. So in terms of this, yeah, you can decide what to do for yourself. Obviously, both scanners will allow you to calibrate your scanner if you need to do it. You can buy ITA target, etc. I wouldn't go that far, to be honest with you, but it does pretty good job. And then the second bit of software that I use once I get my raw files, I download them into Lightroom. So that's just my regular DAM, which is Digital Asset Manager. So that's where I store all my images. And then what I do is I use this plugin which is called Negative Lab Pro. And Negative Lab Pro is a plugin that works with the Lightroom, and it's effectively for conversion of your negatives. So it doesn't really work with the slides, so with the positives. So it only works for the negatives. And it does a reasonably good job. So it's I think it's about £90 or 99 euros, something like this, $99. And it gets you, basically, what it tries to do is tries to emulate the scans from, scanners like Frontier, so the lab scanners Frontier on the Ritsu. And overall, the color conversion gets you in a really good starting point where you want to be. I would say 9 times out of 10, I would say that it probably will get you where you want to be. And there's also additional slides you can do to fine tune the image. So in terms of this is the one I recommend. But as you say, people who use, let's say, software like Silverfast, you can do a lot of this within the software per image. So you do the scan, you do your software adjustment, the color adjustment conversion, and then you save it, let's say, as a DNG or T file, etc., etc. With this one, you can scan all your raw images, then open them in Lightroom, and then do conversion basically in bulk. So you can convert your raw straight away and then fine tune it image by image. So I do find it more intuitive, but again, everyone is different. So in terms of this, you can do what you want. You can also actually do a color conversion within the ViewScan software as well. Again, I did find the interface is not really easy. So in terms of this, I'd rather just get the raw data from the ViewScan, basically raw data from scanner with the ViewScan, and then basically upload it to the software. Okay, where are we at? ViewScan Silverfast. So yeah, ViewScan. I use ViewScan. That's where they still is saying hi to everyone. So where's she? Oh, she's sleeping. Yeah, she doesn't like the wind. She doesn't like the wind, I can tell you that. So we have a door from the neighbor's glass house in the garden right now. So after that, I'm going to go and say hello to them. But it is a little bit windy over here. So let's see. What else do we have here? Adrian asks, I use ViewScan with Nikon 5000 scanner and a Mac. Yeah. So the good thing about ViewScan, it supports basically all scanners you throw at it. And it's one license compared to, let's say, individual licenses that you would have to get. Let's see. We covered that. Okay. Any questions on that or anything else to do film related? So do put them in the comments below, and I'm going to ask them as we go. I'm going to show you a few accessories that I use as well for scanning. So if, those are basic accessories. You might have those already, but obviously puffer is very useful. Gloves. So you don't want to have your greasy fingers on your negative. So obviously this negative is it's a test negative, as I would say. if you need to clean your negatives, let's say they're really old negatives and they may have some mold on them or something like this because of dump storage or something, then get the negative cleaner. I showed you the Misty. I've got to show you the cutter. In terms of storing your negatives, so I have this little folder. Well, I've got a couple of them. So this is just for the latest negatives. So in this folder, I have all my negatives set up. So generally, I scan my negatives. So this is kind of a scan folder. I went through those. So I've got all my negatives put in a brand new sleeve. I normally put the date I showed them, the camera, the event name, etc., etc. So, and I just leave them there. So, and then obviously if you're shooting lots of medium format, then, you know, you got some of those as well, etc., etc. So this generally goes inside some sort of dust-free container, and then I just normally wrap a plastic around it. So this is very useful if you store your negative, let's say, with the little holes that came from your film lab, and if you've got like snappy snaps and some envelopes, it generally could be fine as long as you have some sort of like shoebox to put them in all together, but that setup is generally a lot easier. So, and then you can archive them by year, etc., etc. And obviously in the Lightroom, I normally have the year, the name of the event, and generally I can put some meta tags about the camera. So I generally put the name of the camera in the folder, so after the date, etc. But so I know what it is. But generally, yeah, you can create add metadata into those files. So yeah, negative storage with 83 pages. So that's what I have right now. So this is really good, Roy. Yeah, as you may want to even. I had my negative, like what I'm doing now is I have my sleeves from 10 years ago, so I replaced all of them now. So I've, I bought the new set. The good thing, they're not very expensive nowadays. You can buy those. I think those are Rolly sleeves, and they're not very expensive. So you're looking at something like 100 under 15 pounds or something like this, and that's a lot of that's basically a lot of films through that. Can you get them scanned satisfactorily in the high street or web service? Yes, you can. However, I wouldn't say high street unless your local lab is really good and you know them. I wouldn't go to places like Snappy Snaps. So just not. We had some not very good experience with them, especially developing film. So in terms of this, I would go to places, that you like. So, I mean, like we generally ship our film for developing. And I don't ask for scanning, but something like AG Photographic does it. You got guys at Analog Wonderland, they're great. So, I think something like 650 of scan develop and scan, basically something like 650 or £7 for color roll. So those generally, they go through, I don't know, Rizzo Frontier Scan, I don't remember what they have, but those are generally good and they're low res. So they're going to be small files, but they're good for stuff like social media and even like 6x4 prints. Anything larger than that, you have to pay for high-res scanner, and that's going to cost you more generally. So in terms of this, yeah, if you do look, let's say, at printing your scans after that, so, then generally you may want to either invest in a proper scanner or you're going to pay someone to scan that for you. Okay. DSLR scanning should be carefully checked. Yeah, so Michael says, with DSLR scanning, each individual negative should be carefully checked for sharpness in live view. Make sure it's sharp all over and use a small aperture. So that's the problem with the negative, with the DSLR scanning. A lot of people think it's really fast. It is not. If you want to do it properly, you have to check each negative sharpness. So you don't just move the negative. You don't just move and go to another one. And the problem with this setup, because it's all moves, you may want to put some, blue tack or something just to keep things in place. But yeah, you may want to check each shot you take. Make sure it's sharp. And it's sometimes quite difficult to judge because it's a negative, it's not color positive. So it's really difficult to take. So sometimes I would take a sample shot and I would just look at it on my big screen, let's say on the computer, and then I would take a final shot once I'm 100% happy with it. But it's all adds time. And in terms of this, it may not, it's a lot more hands-on compared to something like scanner. So the idea is, hello Tilly, the idea is to basically look at the pros and cons and see how much time you want to spend with this. and then choose the right direction. As I say, DSLR scanning is the best way to go, because obviously Nikon is not releasing the dedicated scanners. I think the only 120 scanner is available now is Plastek scanner, which is slash reflector slash brown slash Pacific Industry. They all basically make the same scanner, so it's a rebadge thing. That's it. So in terms of this, yes, this is the only option, and generally, if you don't want to pay, let's say, current prices for Coolscan 9000 for medium format, this is a cheaper setup, especially if you have already camera in the lens to go with. Because let's say light could be like 50 quid, the holder could be 100 quid. That's it. If you've got camera and lens, okay, you're gonna spend, maybe you already have a tripod, so you can use a tripod, so you can start rolling with that. More hands-on, but at the same time it's cheaper. And as I say, you can always upgrade your parts individually. It's not like a one box scanner. So eventually, let's say if you're gonna release a 100 megapixel camera, effectively you buy a 100 megapixel camera, you now have 100 megapixel scan, etc., etc. So yeah, Akim says literally the same thing. So yeah, you got the silver scan available only for individual scanner and serial number. So even if you buy the same model with a different serial number, you need to pay additional license. Have you used drum scanners? I haven't used drum scanners myself. I sent prints to places. As I said, you can get them. There's a place in Scotland, I think they charge about £15 per image. In terms of this, I would say that it's worth it if you have an exhibition. So let's say if I have an exhibition and I show off maybe, like let's say it's a group exhibition and I've got 3 images to show in the group exhibition, then I'll pay the £15 per image. So it's worth it to me. But generally, as I say, Coolscan 9000 gets me, anywhere I want in the medium format. There's no reason to buy Coolscan 9000 medium format scanner for 35mm film scanners, because again, there's really no need for that. So Coolscan 5000, according to a lot of people, actually does the 35mm slightly sharper than 9000. But again, you can buy cheaper, currently available options that are available brand new for a lot less right now for 35mm. So that's what it is. And obviously, if you shoot in large format, unfortunately, yeah, the best way is DSLR scanning at the moment. The next one up would be, well, pretty much Epson flatbed, unless you want to pay for drum scans, of course. Okay, well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, because that was a lot. So next week we're gonna do more conversational. So I have a 99% chance of confirmed guest. So we're just in the finalizing stages. So it's gonna be a lot more conversational, a lot easier. So hopefully, no more lectures for you guys. But again, when Becky is away, we're gonna do one that could be potentially useful for everyone. And then the other one we're gonna, I'll try to do the next one more of a conversation about regular stuff. So we're probably going to talk about current Nikon stuff, deliveries, etc., etc. So that seems what everyone likes. But if you do have questions still on film, I'm happy to answer them, since it's 3:18. I can stay for another 5 minutes. Drum scanners, drum scanners. Let's see if I covered everyone. No, I think we're good. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Tilly is happy to go to the garden. It seems like it's not windy anymore, so hopefully we can go out and go for a short walk as well. Thank you very much, everyone. So as I say, stay tuned. We're going to have our podcast next week. Hopefully on Wednesday, we're going to have a live stream with me and a special guest. So to be confirmed, but it's pretty much 99% there. So yeah, I'll keep you updated. And yeah, if you have any questions on the scanners, do leave them in the comments below. We will try to answer them. Thank you very much for all your support. Hopefully next one is going to be a lot smoother. And no more beanies. Bye-bye.